There's a prayer that Satan himself fears, a prayer whispered in the darkest depths of Auschwitz, a prayer that saved lives when death seemed certain. But why doesn't the church talk about it? Today, you'll uncover the spiritual secret St. Maximilian Kolbe carried, the same saint who offered his life for a stranger, the same man who faced evil head-on and won. And yes, he had a secret weapon. Have you ever felt something watching you in your most vulnerable moments? That strange feeling when you're alone at home, the inexplicable weight that settles on your shoulders for no apparent reason, the sense that invisible forces are conspiring against your peace. It's not your imagination. St. Paul himself warned that our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers in the heavenly realms, against spiritual forces of wickedness. But here's what almost no one tells you. There is protection. There's a barrier you can raise, and it comes through the exact words a Polish saint repeated every day. St. Maximilian Kolbe wasn't an ordinary saint. He was a soldier, a spiritual warrior who understood from a young age that he was at war. War against whom? Against the one Jesus called the father of lies. At 22, Kolbe had a vision that changed everything. Our Lady appeared to him holding two crowns, one white representing purity, one red representing martyrdom. She asked which he would choose. Kolbe didn't hesitate. He said he wanted both, purity and martyrdom, a holy life and a heroic death. But what he didn't know is that this choice would make him one of Satan's greatest enemies on earth. Why? Because Kolbe discovered something few saints have discovered. He discovered a specific prayer, a spiritual formula that creates an impenetrable barrier against darkness. This prayer isn't in popular devotion books. It's not taught in catechism classes. It doesn't appear on Catholic television programs. Why? Because its power is so intense that, well, some truths are kept for those who truly need them. Imagine for a moment you're facing an impossible situation. Despair knocks at your door. Anxiety consumes your thoughts. You feel you're losing the battle against forces you can't see or understand. That's exactly what happened to thousands in Auschwitz. Hell on earth, a place where humanity touched the bottom of the well, where evil showed its most cruel face. But there was a man there who remained at peace, a prisoner who radiated light amidst the darkness, a saint who transformed a starvation chamber into a chapel. His name? Maximilian Kolbe. How did he do it? How did he maintain his faith when everything conspired against it? How did he protect not only himself, but also the other prisoners? The answer lies in the prayer he recited every day, the same prayer that protected him from a young age, the same spiritual formula that made him invincible against the attacks of the evil one. But wait, before revealing this prayer, you need to understand something crucial. You need to understand why it works, why it has power, why Satan fears it so much. The answer lies in a truth the early church knew well, a truth that was lost over the centuries. The truth that certain words, spoken with genuine faith, create real spiritual shields. It's not magic, it's not superstition. It's divine power channeled through the human word united with faith. It's the same principle Jesus used when he spoke just one word and the demons fled. Kolbe understood this better than any other saint of his time. He understood that there's a hierarchy in the spiritual world, and that those who know the right words can invoke protection of the highest level. That's why he wasn't afraid. That's why he remained calm, even when the Nazis shouted at him. That's why he could convert other prisoners in the concentration camp itself. He had a protection that no one could take away. And now you can have the same protection. You can raise the same spiritual barrier. You can invoke the same divine shield that protected a saint in the darkest place in human history. But first, let me tell you something that will surprise you. Something about how this prayer came to Kolbe. Something about its origin that few know. Stop. Take a deep breath. Feel the air entering your lungs. because what I'm about to reveal will completely change your understanding of spiritual protection. This prayer wasn't created by Kolbe. It's much older, much more powerful. It comes from a tradition dating back to the early centuries of Christianity, a tradition that the Church Fathers knew and practiced in secret. Kolbe discovered it during his studies in Rome. He was researching ancient texts in the Vatican Library when he found a 4th century manuscript, a document that had been preserved by monks who understood its invaluable worth. In the manuscript was written a prayer in Latin, a specific invocation to the Virgin Mary. But not just any invocation. It was a precise formula that created what the mystics called a Marian circle of protection. When Kolbe read that prayer for the first time, he felt something extraordinary. A maternal presence descended upon him. A feeling of absolute protection enveloped his soul. He knew immediately that he had found a spiritual treasure. But there was a problem. The manuscript was incomplete. Some words had been lost over time. Some sentences were illegible. How to discover the complete prayer? That's when the miracle happened. That same night, Kolbe had a dream. Our Lady appeared to him and completed the missing words. She dictated phrase by phrase until the prayer was perfect again. When he woke up, Kolbe immediately wrote down everything he had received. He compared it to the ancient manuscript. The pieces fit perfectly. The prayer was complete again after centuries lost. From that day on, Kolbe never went a day without reciting this prayer. In the morning, upon waking, at night, before sleeping, in moments of danger, in moments of temptation, whenever he felt the presence of evil approaching. And it worked. It always worked. Kolbe saw demons flee when he uttered certain words. He felt temptations dissipate like mist in the sun. He experienced a peace that surpassed all human understanding. But the real test of this prayer happened in Auschwitz, in the place where Satan himself seemed to have set up his throne on earth, in the epicenter of human evil. There, Kolbe would discover if his spiritual protection would withstand the ultimate test. And it did. Not only did it resist, but it shone even brighter. In Block 14, where Kolbe was imprisoned, other men noticed something different. There was an aura of peace around him, a visible protection that even the cruelest guards couldn't break. When Kolbe was taken to the starvation chamber, he continued reciting his prayer, while other prisoners wept in despair. He comforted them with words of hope. As death drew near, he remained serene. Why? Because he knew he was protected, not protected from physical death, but protected from true defeat, protected from despair, protected from the loss of faith, protected from surrendering his soul to the enemy, and even in death, even as he received the lethal injection, Kolbe died reciting this prayer. His last words on earth were the words of protection he had learned in Rome, the words Our Lady had completed in a dream. Now you are about to discover these same words, the same prayer that protected a saint in the hell of Auschwitz, the same spiritual shield that defeated evil when it seemed invincible. But before revealing the prayer, I need to warn you about something important, about why some people don't get the expected results, about why this protection doesn't work for everyone in the same way. The answer lies in a truth that Kolbe discovered and that changed his life forever. This prayer is not just a set of beautiful words. It's not just pious devotion. It is a spiritual weapon forged in the fires of the most intense tribulation. It's a shield tested on the cruelest battlefield in history. Do you want to know why the church doesn't openly teach this prayer? Why it doesn't appear in popular missals? Why priests don't talk about it from the pulpits? The answer will shock you. The answer will reveal a truth about how human institutions work, even the sacred ones, even those established by Christ himself. It's not because the prayer doesn't work. It's not because it's dangerous. It's not because it goes against doctrine. It's for a much more human reason, much sadder, much more real. It's because it works too well, because its power is so evident, so immediate, so transformative, that it would expose the lack of faith of many who should be examples. It would expose the spiritual mediocrity that has settled in some hearts that should be ablaze. Imagine a priest who has never experienced real spiritual power. Imagine a bishop who has reduced faith to empty rituals. Imagine a cardinal who has forgotten that there is a spiritual war happening every second. How would they react if they discovered that there is a prayer capable of producing visible miracles? How would they feel knowing that there are faithful experiencing supernatural protection while they live lukewarm spiritual lives? That's why the prayer remains in the shadows. That's why it's passed down from saint to saint in secret. That's why you won't find it easily, because its power threatens the status quo of spiritual mediocrity. But Kolbe didn't have time for mediocrity. Kolbe couldn't afford a lukewarm faith. Kolbe was literally fighting for life, for souls, for the eternity of thousands of people. And that's why he used this prayer without fear, without shame, without concern for what others might think. He knew he was at war, and in war, you use all the weapons available. Let me tell you about something specific that happened in Auschwitz, something that was witnessed by other prisoners, something that undeniably proves the power of this prayer. It was a winter night in 1941. The cold cut like a blade. The prisoners were huddled together in the icy barracks. Hunger gnawed at their empty stomachs. Despair hung in the air like toxic fog. Suddenly, they began to hear screams coming from the next barrack. Screams of pure terror. Screams that chilled the blood. Some prisoners whispered that it was a man who had gone mad, who had completely lost his reason. But the screams were different. They weren't from human madness. They were the screams of someone being tormented by something invisible, something supernatural, something diabolical. The guards tried to calm the man. They beat him. They threatened to kill him. But the screams only got worse. The man thrashed about as if he were fighting against enemies that no one could see. That's when Kolbe stood up. His fellow inmates tried to hold him back. It was dangerous to attract the guards' attention. It was certain death to leave the barrack at night, but Kolbe didn't hesitate. He walked towards the screams. When the guards saw him, they were surprised. Which prisoner would be foolish enough to expose himself like that? Kolbe reached the tormented man. He placed his hand on his head and began to recite his prayer, word for word, phrase for phrase, with a firm and clear voice. What happened next silenced the entire camp. The screams stopped instantly. The man calmed down as if he had received a powerful sedative. A supernatural peace descended upon him. But that wasn't all. Other prisoners reported seeing a soft light surrounding Kolbe as he prayed. A light that came from nowhere. A light that couldn't be explained by physics. The guards themselves were disturbed. They didn't understand what had happened. How had a simple prisoner managed to calm someone they couldn't control, even with violence? Some guards were so frightened that they backed away. Others watched Kolbe with a mixture of terror and respect. For the first time, they were seeing real power. Power that didn't come from weapons or uniforms. From that night on, something changed in the camp. The prisoners began to secretly seek out Kolbe. They wanted to know what words he had used, what prayer had enough power to expel demons. Kolbe didn't deny help to anyone. He taught the prayer to those who were willing to learn, but always with a condition, always with an important warning. He said that the prayer only worked for those who truly believed, for those who had no doubts about the power of Our Lady, for those who were willing to surrender their lives completely to divine protection, because this prayer is not a magic charm. It's not a superstitious formula. It's a covenant between the human soul and the Queen of Heaven. A covenant that demands total faith and complete surrender. That's why some don't get results. That's why some recite the words but don't experience the protection, because they pronounce them with their mouths, but doubt with their hearts. They ask for protection, but don't trust the protector. Kolbe understood this perfectly. That's why he not only taught the words of the prayer, he also taught the necessary attitude of the heart, the indispensable spiritual preparation, the inner disposition that opens the gates of heaven. And those who learned correctly experienced miracles. They experienced real protection. They experienced a peace that defied all external circumstances. And there were prisoners who reported prophetic dreams after beginning to recite the prayer, dreams that warned them of dangers, dreams that guided them on how to survive. Others recounted feeling a maternal presence beside them during the hardest moments, a sensation that they weren't alone, that someone incredibly powerful was watching over them. Some even reported being inexplicably ignored by the cruelest guards, as if an invisible spiritual shield protected them, as if they were overlooked by agents of evil. But the most striking testimony came from a prisoner doctor, a cultured, rational man who didn't believe in religious superstitions until he met Kolbe. This doctor was losing faith. He was starting to believe that God had abandoned humanity. How could a good God allow such suffering? How to maintain hope amidst so much cruelty? That's when Kolbe taught him the prayer, not just the words, but the profound meaning. Not just the formula, but the theology behind it. Not just the protection, but the reason for its effectiveness. The doctor decided to test it. He began reciting the prayer every day, in the morning, upon waking, at night, before sleeping, during the most difficult hours of the day. 3 weeks later, something extraordinary happened. The doctor was selected for a medical experiment, one of those diabolical experiments the Nazis performed on prisoners. It was practically a death sentence, but the night before he had a very clear dream. He saw Our Lady pointing to a specific area in the field. When he woke up, he felt an inexplicable urgency to go to that place. Against all logic, he left the barrack and went to the place in his dream. There he found a small opening in the fence, a flaw no one had noticed, an escape chance that seemed impossible. The doctor hesitated. Escaping was almost suicide. If he were caught, he would be tortured before dying. But something inside him told him to trust, to follow the guidance he had received. He went through the opening. He ran through the forest. He walked for 3 days without food, until he found Polish partisans who took him to safety. Years later, already free, this doctor wrote his memoirs. He dedicated an entire chapter to the prayer he learned from Kolbe. He called it, "The greatest treasure I gained in hell." This is just one of thousands of testimonies, because this prayer continued to be secretly transmitted after Kolbe's death, from saint to saint, from believer to believer, from generation to generation. Each person who learned it correctly experienced real protection, experienced divine guidance, experienced a peace the world cannot give nor take away. And now, it's your turn. The moment has come for you to receive this spiritual treasure, to learn the exact words Kolbe recited every day, the words that protected him until the last moment of his life. But before revealing the prayer, I need to teach you something crucial. I need to explain how it works, why it has power, what is the theology behind its effectiveness, because if you don't understand the foundation, you'll be reciting empty words. If you don't understand the spiritual mechanism, it will be like a soldier trying to use a weapon without knowing how it works. The prayer works on 3 basic principles, 3 spiritual laws that Kolbe mastered perfectly. 3 truths that transformed his life and can transform yours as well. First, the principle of spiritual jurisdiction. Second, the law of Marian intercession. Third, the power of total alliance. Let me explain each one. Because when you understand these principles, the prayer will become more than words. It will become a key that opens doors in the spiritual world. The first principle is spiritual jurisdiction. Kolbe discovered that the invisible world has hierarchies. It has authorities. It has zones of power and influence. When you invoke the right name, you activate the right authority. You obtain real protection. Mary is not just the mother of Jesus. She is the queen of the universe. She has authority over all angels. She has power over all demons. When you place yourself under her protection, you are invoking the highest possible spiritual jurisdiction. The second principle is Marian intercession. Mary is constantly interceding for us before her Son, but there are specific ways to activate this intercession. Precise words that open direct channels of communication with her. The third principle is total alliance. You cannot ask for partial protection. You cannot want the benefits without the commitment. Kolbe gave his entire life to Mary. That's why she protected him entirely. Now that you understand the fundamentals, you're ready to receive the prayer. The same prayer Kolbe found in Rome. The same one Our Lady completed in a dream. The same one that protected a saint in the hell of Auschwitz. Here it is, word for word, phrase for phrase. Exactly as Kolbe recited it. O Mary Immaculate, Queen of heaven and earth, Mother of mercy and terror of demons, I humbly prostrate myself before your divine majesty. I accept you as my absolute sovereign. I surrender to you my soul, my body, my life, and my eternity. Be my shield against all attacks of the evil one. Be my fortress in times of tribulation. Be my light in the hours of darkness. Be my hope when all seems lost. With your miraculous medal on my chest, with your holy name on my lips, with your protection enveloping my soul, I declare that no evil can reach me. For whoever touched me touched the apple of your eye. O Immaculate Conception, you who crushed the head of the serpent, crush also all the demons who conspire against me by the power of your immaculate heart, by the precious blood of your Son Jesus, by the authority given to you by the Eternal Father. Protect me now and always. Amen. This is the complete prayer. These are the exact words. This is the spiritual formula that defeated evil when it seemed invincible. But wait, it's not enough to just read the words. You need to know how to use this prayer correctly, how to activate it effectively, how to transform it into real protection for your life. First, recite this prayer in the morning as soon as you wake up, before getting out of bed, before facing the world. It's your spiritual armor for the day that is beginning. Second, recite it again at night before going to sleep. It's your protection during the vulnerable hours of sleep, when your consciousness is off and you are more exposed to spiritual attacks. Third, whenever you feel an evil presence, whenever a temptation comes with unusual force, whenever you experience inexplicable fear or supernatural anxiety. Fourth, carry a miraculous medal with you always. It's not superstition. It's a physical symbol of spiritual protection, a constant reminder of the covenant you've made with Mary. Fifth, pray this prayer with absolute faith. No doubts, no questions. If you doubt, you're nullifying the power of the words. You're breaking the covenant before it's even formed. But there's something more, something Kolbe always emphasized. This prayer comes with responsibilities. It comes with commitments. It's not free protection. It's a sacred covenant. If you place yourself under Mary's protection, you need to live like a son of Mary. You need to avoid deliberate sin. You need to strive for holiness. You need to honor the one you've chosen as your queen. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It means you have to be striving for perfection. You have to be striving to please the one who protects you. Kolbe knew this. That's why he lived a life of radical purity. That's why he surrendered to martyrdom without hesitation. That's why he chose death rather than betray his covenant with Mary. And the protection he experienced can be yours too. The peace he maintained in Auschwitz can fill your heart too. The victory he won over evil can be your victory too. Let me tell you what happened after Kolbe received the lethal injection, what witnesses saw in his final moments, because even in death, the prayer continued to demonstrate its power. The other prisoners in the starvation chamber were expecting to die in agony, expecting screams of pain, expecting the final despair of a man facing death. But that's not what happened. When the injection took effect, Kolbe remained serene. His lips continued to move. He was still reciting his prayer of protection. And then something extraordinary happened. Witnesses reported seeing a soft light illuminate Kolbe's face. A light that came from nowhere. A light that seemed to come from within him. Other prisoners said they felt a very powerful, feminine presence in the chamber. A presence that brought peace amidst the horror. A presence that transformed that place of death into a sanctuary. Even the guards were disturbed. They were used to death. They were used to suffering. But they had never seen anyone die with such peace, with such dignity, with such spiritual power. The doctor who administered the injection left the chamber trembling. He later confessed that he could never forget Kolbe's eyes. He said they were the eyes of someone seeing something glorious, something no one else could see. And that's how Kolbe departed this life, protected until the last second, at peace until his last breath, victorious until the last beat of his heart. His prayer protected him from true defeat. His covenant with Mary kept him safe from true destruction. His faith made him invincible against the true enemy. And now this same protection is available to you. These same words can be your words. This same covenant can be your covenant. This same victory can be your victory, but you need to decide. You need to choose whether you just want to know the prayer or whether you want to live it, whether you want just the words or whether you want the power, whether you want just information or whether you want transformation. Because this prayer is not for collectors of curiosities. It's not for collectors of prayers. It's for spiritual warriors, for soldiers of Christ, for devoted children of Mary. If you are willing to surrender completely, you will experience supernatural protection. If you are willing to live in holiness, you will know indescribable peace. If you are willing to trust without reservation, you will achieve impossible victories. Thousands of people around the world have already discovered this treasure. They are already living under this protection. They have already experienced the power of this sacred covenant. There are accounts of people who have inexplicably escaped accidents, cars that should have collided but stopped at the last minute, dangerous situations where an invisible force intervened. There are testimonies of profound spiritual healings, addictions that disappeared overnight, depressions that dissipated like fog, fears that simply evaporated. There are stories of families that were saved from destruction, marriages that were miraculously restored, children who returned home, relationships that were reborn from the ashes, all because someone had the courage to make the covenant. Someone accepted to surrender their life to Mary's protection. Someone chose to live under the authority of the Queen of Heaven. That someone can be you, today, now, at this very moment as you are listening to these words. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, feel Mary's presence beside you. She is waiting for your decision. She is waiting for you to accept her protection. Recite the prayer now, aloud if possible, with all the faith you can muster, with all the sincerity of your heart. O Mary Immaculate, Queen of Heaven and Earth, I accept you as my absolute sovereign. I surrender my entire life to you. Protect me now and always. If you prayed this prayer with sincere faith, something has changed in your life at this moment. A covenant has been formed. A protection has been activated. A spiritual shield has been raised around you. You are no longer alone in this battle. You are no longer defenseless against the attacks of the evil one. You are no longer at the mercy of the forces of darkness. You now have the same protection as Saint Maximilian Kolbe. You have the same covenant that kept him at peace in the hell of Auschwitz. You have the same spiritual weapon that defeated Satan himself. Use this protection wisely. Honor this covenant with your life. Live as a child of the Queen of Heaven and experience a victory that the world cannot give or take away. The prayer that Satan himself fears is now yours. The secret that the church has guarded for centuries is now in your hands. The protection that saved a saint can save you too. This is the spiritual legacy of Saint Maximilian Kolbe. This is the treasure he left for all of us. This is the weapon that can change your life forever. Use it well, live it fully, and discover that there are victories that not even death can steal.